Hi, my name's Olivia, and I just want to introduce this video which will teach you how to make your own print using a stamp that you carve yourself. Enjoy! To make this print, you'll need a good cup of tea, a glass slide, a brayer, some speedball ink fabric inks, a pencil, a lino cutter, some scissors, some rubber to be cut, and the design you want to make. To begin, take the image that you want to carve and cover it heavily with pencil. You can use just a regular number 2 pencil or HB lead, but the softer the lead, the better. In my case, I want to make 2 different colors in my print, so I'm separating the original image into the 2 components. Take your block of rubbery cutting material and lay the image you want to transfer face down on top. Rub well to transfer all of the pencil, and you can check occasionally by lifting one corner to see if you've transferred the entire image. The rubber can be found in the block printing section of any art supply store. You can also use a harder linoleum or wood, but this is the easiest material to cut and the most flexible for making a stamp. Again, in my case, I'm making 2 stamps, so I'm cutting the rubber apart before I transfer the next one, which is the antlers. This print is inspired by one of my favorite YouTube channels called The Brain Scoop, whose mascot of sorts is a character called Soon Raccoon. Next, get out your cutting tool. I purchased the one that has a couple different tips that you can store in the base. You want to use a tip size appropriate for the area that you're working, and since I'm starting on the outside and I'll need to remove a lot of material, I'm starting with a larger tip. Cut away at the white parts of your stamp, being careful not to cut into the dark images. Also, one tip is to cut away from your fingers, even though it's harder to control. If you cut towards your fingers, you might end up actually stabbing your fingers, which happened to me while I was doing this. Play around with the tool, seeing which way to hold the tool best carves in the area that you're in. Sometimes holding it sideways as opposed to straight up and down is the easiest way to go. You also want to make sure that anything that's not penciled in is below the level of the pencil. Otherwise you'll get inked as well, and it will transfer lines onto your final print design. So here we go. I've cut out the second part to my image, which is the antlers. For this next step, you'll need your brayer, your ink, your glass slide, and your stamps, and I use a piece of paper to test the images first before I print on fabric. Start with a little bit of ink and build up as you feel you need. The goal is to get a really thin, even layer on the glass and on the brayer. I recommend going up and down and side to side before rolling over your stamp. Once your brayer is evenly inked, run it over your stamp, and then either turn your stamp over onto your piece of paper, or the best way to do it is to actually leave the stamp face up and place what you're printing on top of it. Press firmly with your fingers, rubbing all over to really help the ink transfer from your stamp to your printing surface. The reason we test on paper is so that we can see where on our stamp we haven't cut the white parts down enough. Those lines will show up on the stamp and on the paper, and after you do a test run, you can go back and carve down all of the parts that are still too high. Today I'm printing on a piece of heavy cotton, and because I want to print in a pattern, I've finger pressed in some lines to kind of give me a grid to help me align where I want my raccoon faces. Again, just apply the ink, making sure it's thin and even. Not always a good idea to use the brayer over your fabric. As you can see, I hit it twice with the brayer, so I would not recommend that. Align the stamp, press down firmly, rub for a little while, and then remove in one quick stroke. If you're using a second stamp, repeat the whole process. Just clean your brayer with soap and water in between, align the second stamp, and press firmly, transfer the image. I'm using a gold ink here for a fun contrast color. The final step here is just using a permanent marker to make tiny whisker dots. I didn't want to try to leave those in the stamp to cut out, so I'm applying them after I've done the stamping. When you're done printing, you can wash these stamps with soap and water. Use a paper towel to dry them, but make sure they're dried completely before you try using them with another color. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed learning how to make a stamp to make a block print, and I look forward to seeing if any of you use this technique to make a print in the future.